I'm Jim Collison, live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on August 18th, 2017. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during our broadcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. If you just peek down there, bottom left-hand corner, it says log in. Click that. Choose the guest account. You don't have to make one. Just choose the guest account. Put your name in where it says guest. Take the numbers out. And that way we know who you are. We can call you out by name in the chat room, and we will take your questions live. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions, you can send us an email. Just contact us, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact form right there on the live page. Dean Jones is our host today. Dean's a principal architect for Gallup's Global Client Learning and Strategy. I didn't say that right, Dean, but it's close enough. Welcome back to another Call to Coach.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Good to have you. We are going to dive in on a kind of an Ask Me Anything segment today. We've got some questions preloaded. We are going to pull some questions from our Facebook group. We're going to pull some questions from the chat room. Dean, let's get started right away. I want to pick your brain on a little bit of what we're thinking about when we think about training and education at Gallup in the future.
Yeah.
As you think about 2018, can you give us a little update on where we're going and what we're doing?
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting. So I spend a lot of time thinking about the future. We spend a lot of time thinking about the future and where we're going with everything. I would say one of the things that's cool that we're doing right now is we're working on kind of the set of kind of second level, if you will, coach development opportunities, right? So what are the courses? What are the different development opportunities that we've got that are kind of like the next level stuff? So I think I've said this before, but the accelerated course, all those successful strengths coaching and coaching individual managers and teams, we consider that kind of all the first level stuff, right? And all the stuff that was a grounding, we never intended it. I think for some people, they wondered or thought that that was going to be it. We never intended it to be it, right? That was just, it gets you into the conversation. It gives you some stuff to work with. We think it gives you a lot of stuff to work with, actually, if you want to know the truth. We get lots of feedback from coaches like, okay, I did the accelerated course. Now, how do I make sense of all this stuff, right? So, and we're thinking about that too. So, but the intention is to be able to then have all this new kind of second level stuff that we say, okay, where do you go from there? A couple of the things that we've done recently, at the summit, we led pilots for our advanced strengths coaching course. So we did a one-day kind of session last year at the summit around this material, the advanced strengths coaching material, and it was on this thing we call the developmental milestones. And so we got lots of great feedback about it. We realized that one of the things was one day wasn't enough. And so that we needed 2 full days to be able to do this. We did 2 pilots this time. Again, we got great feedback from the coaches that participated, and we had built out. So we started out with these developmental milestones that came from some conversations with coaches all over the world. Then we added to it some of what we consider sort of fundamental coaching skills. And so now we're actually we're refining what we're doing with the advanced strengths coaching course. We're also adding some additional material to it again. And, we're playing around with it, honestly. And we're going to run it, I think, 3 times in the fall is the plan, that we'll run it, that people can, if they want to participate in this, they can come and participate in this 2-day course. I think we're going to try to run it. We're running it US only right now. I think we're going to run it in Chicago and a couple other cities. And so there's that. And I'm super excited about that. It's interesting. I will tell you this funny thing about the course. Okay. So one is it's all the material that sits behind our current curriculum. So it's the material that sits behind the accelerated course. It's much more conceptual in nature, right? And so it's much more high concept. So how it's kind of like, how when you move from undergraduate degree to your graduate degree and you get deeper into the concepts, it's much more conceptual in nature. The other thing about it that's really interesting is that I notice is it's almost like we're working with the coaches that are in the program. They're like guinea pigs. I got an email from a coach who was in the course who said, yeah, at the time the course was great, but since the course, I really noticed it in my coaching. right? Like I've really noticed a shift in my coaching. So what I love about it is that it's helping kind of create kind of a meaningful shift in the kind of clarity and ability that coaches have. And that is, I'm super excited about that. So that's the Advanced Strengths Coaching course. We're doing that. The other thing that we're working on right now that went really, really well was our Train the Trainer course for Clifton Strengths Discovery. So many people know that we, for literally for decades, we've had a Clifton Strengths Discovery course that was like our introductory course to strengths. We just at the summit rolled out for the very first time, the ability to train people other than Gallup people to lead it. So we did a 3-day Train the Trainer on that at the summit. That went really, really well. We are only letting people who are certified coaches into it right now. So we are only you have to be a certified coach first in order to be able to do that. There is a certification associated with this. So when somebody graduates from this Train the Trainer, they are certified to lead Clifton Strengths Discovery. Okay. It's a 3-day course. We just adjusted the price on it as well. So going forward, we're going to offer it in the fall, I think a couple times. And it's now going to be, I think, $3,500. So it's a really, and you get certified to be able to lead this Clifton Strengths Discovery course. So I'm super excited about that. I think that's going to be really powerful for people.
Dean, can you talk just briefly about when we say the Clifton Strengths Discovery, what do we intend in that course for people who are giving that? What's the intention of it? What's the target audience?
Yeah. So it's designed to be a course that's for people it's designed to be essentially what I describe as basic strengths education for people. So one of the things, and I've said this before, but I think one of the challenges we often get with people is that they do the assessment, they do the Clifton Strengths, they get the report, and many people go right into a coaching session. But the coaching session, you can't really do coaching with somebody because they don't really know enough about their report, enough about strengths like that. They have no context for what they're looking at. So one of the things that's really powerful to do is once people have done the assessment is to take them through some kind of basic strengths education. So it really introduces them to the world of strengths and allows them to do that. And then when you do a coaching session after that, people really, they have a lot more questions. You could deal with them and their strengths profile more than just kind of then teaching them entry-level concepts or introductory concepts. So Clifton Strengths Discovery has been our course for doing that. And the way we design the course is you can do a half-day version of it. You can do the first half day and it works as a standalone. You can do a full day, and there's 2 half days, or you can lead it as 2 consecutive half day courses, right? And it gives people all kind of the introductory concepts. One of the things I know is there's many coaches that have built their own introductory courses to strengths, right? And that's great. And people should do that. And in a lot of cases, those are the kind of introductory courses that serve a particular audience that we wouldn't necessarily serve. So it's kind of like, people say, I know like people have built introductory courses that are part of workforce development programs, or introductory courses that are specific to specific markets like healthcare, where they've built something that's specific that we may or may not ever build something specific to that market. And I think those are super, super useful. In this case, this is a generic course that's designed to really get somebody started with strengths. So if it's something where your talent really isn't building a course like that, or you want to make sure you've got something that is, like, this is hard for me to say, but it's true, is really world-class, right? I mean, this is we worked for 2.5 years rebuilding this course, essentially. We launched our newest version of it last fall, and it's horrible to say, but we went through like 3 different teams of design consultants that worked on it because we couldn't figure out a way initially to make it feel fresh and new and relevant, how to really, really work through all the materials so that it really nailed it. And so we spent a lot of time working on this to make sure we got it right.
Dean, that's a course we offer individuals if they want to come just take that from us. Would you consider this a turnkey for a coach, maybe a new coach who hasn't developed their own discovery course? They could come, get trained, and then we give them, I think, 50 units 25. Or 25. So 25 units for them to be able to go out and do that, and then they can purchase those. Is it that kind of setup for our coaches?
Yeah, I think it's great for a new coach. The one thing is I would say is it's not just new coaches. I will tell you a lot of coaches, I mean, you see that in our strength sessions, right? Or in our summit sessions, right? Where there's just a ton of interest from people on how do I deliver a course that I know is going to work? Right? How do I deliver a course that I know is gonna be effective and like that? You can pretty much go to the bank on that this course is really going to be effective. The other thing about our Train the Trainer is we took some of the material that we use to train our own course leaders and put it in this Train the Trainer. So if you want an education, honestly, just on how to be a better course leader, on how to be somebody who's a better trainer or a better course leader, it's also really great for that. It's interesting. I happened to look at the course evaluation for it, and it got really, really high marks at the summit. So I know it's something that just really is super valuable for folks. So like that. Makes sense?
So that's a certification. The ASC is a certification.
Yep.
I've gotten some questions. Are we thinking about other certifications?
Yeah. We are. I don't, I was hesitant because we're trying to think about a lot of things, but yeah, so we are thinking about that. So one of the things that we've toyed around with is some kind of certification around engagement, specific employee engagement, and using the Q12. Many coaches I know inside organizations that they're working with use the Q12. So we've been thinking about, should we certify folks inside of that? We've also been thinking about, should there be some kind of broader workplace certification? Right. And it's one thing that we're honestly actively working on is how would we offer that? Who would we offer that to, and who would we partner with on that conceivably? So we're really thinking about, okay, what's the right approach for other certifications that we can offer? One of the things we want to make sure that we do is we want to continue to make sure that just being a Gallup certified strengths coach, it as a certification is a powerful certification. So we don't want to water that down. Right. And it's like that it's just one certification among many. We really want to make sure that we're bolstering that and that we're supporting that like that. So we're doing that. And at the same time, we're thinking about what are the other kind of certifications that we want to make sure that we make available.
And how will we announce those when those become available? How will we announce they're available to coaches?
I will tell you, typically, as we think about these, there's two things, and people don't like when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our way of going about doing this is we typically go to our certified coaches first. So the two ways that we typically because when we go out and when we're trying stuff, we typically try stuff with certified coaches. Right. And one of the things I've said internally about many of you, is that one of the things that's great about working with our certified coaches is they're forgiving. They are, when we try stuff and we tell people, hey, we're trying stuff. We know some of our coaches know themselves and say, hey, look, I shouldn't be in the experimental version. It makes me crazy. Right. But for many of our coaches, they love, as we're playing around with stuff, participating in it. And so we typically go to our certified coaches first and say, hey, look, you wanna do stuff with us, right? We're playing around with this, or we're thinking about this. We'd like to go there. And one of the things that's really cool about our certified coaches is they're very forgiving about that kind of stuff. And so we want everything to be world-class. We want things to be perfect, but we also need to have, this is probably a silly analogy, but we need a sandbox we can play in as we're building stuff, to know, hey, look, to try stuff out. And so working with certified coaches is typically how we start announcing that stuff, So
it's like beta testing software. Just you
what
you're getting in. You got to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Dean, we've used the word certification about 800 times already. And let me ask you a hard certification question.
Okay, please.
We are seeing more and more. I'm seeing coaches creating their own certifications out there. We've seen several of them pop up.
Yeah.
And of course we have certifications, and it's creating questions in the coaching community. So is this competition? Are we competing now? Are we trying to compete with our coaches? How is this? Can you talk kind of through that?
Yeah, let me talk about two things. I think there's two areas around that. There's to just address that question. I think there's the coaches creating certification programs, which is different than, I think, sometimes coaches feel like they're competing with us around stuff. So let me answer both of those separately, okay? So we do know that there are certain coaches who have then turned around and created their own programs for coaches, right? And some of the programs are programs that are like how to sell and market your business, how to grow your business, and some programs are how to be a coach, right? How to go coach. Here's kind of the caveat. We know that those programs are going on. In some cases, we support those. We have said we're not probably going to be the best people at teaching coaches on how to sell their services and market their services. At least right now, we would say, gosh, we're not the right folks to do it. And there are other coaches who have programs that are actually really, really good around that. And in many cases, when coaches come to me and say, hey, do you know somebody who could help me with this? There's 2 or 3 people immediately that come to mind that I always say, hey, I would go talk to this person because I think they would be great, rather than that, we don't offer a how to market yourself as a coach course, or program. And so typically we'll say, hey, go do that. We also know that there are coaches who offer, a coaching certification where they're training people around that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The one caveat that I've seen lately is people go through our coaching courses, then take our materials, repackage them into their own program, and then offer it. And we won't let people do that, right? We will say to people, hey, you can't take our materials and repackage our materials and turn that into your own program. So I want to make sure that I'm clear about that. When people develop their own programs, they have to have their own content and their own materials in the way they train people. And there have been...
What about the kits? I've seen a few selling our kits and then offering their own training around it. That okay?
Yeah, as long as I will tell you, it gets into a nebulous territory, right? It's one where if you've got your own content, like if you're just taking the kits and taking people through our course with our kits, we would probably say, hey, that's probably not right. Right? If people are going through, we would say, hey, look, I wouldn't be doing that. It's just too dangerously close. There are people, though, who have a distinctly different background than we have, who come at coaching from a different arena, or have a specialized area in coaching where they're offering certification. That's fair game, right? You have to have, if you're going to start your own certification for coaches, you really have to have your own content to around that to be able to do that. So that's really where the line is around that. And there's a place where it's super clear that they've done it perfectly. There's areas where it's super clear that we would say, gosh, you just can't do that. That's a violation of the agreement, right? And then there's gray area places, right? And we try to be as rational and as collaborative around helping people. In 90% of the cases, when somebody's done something like that, they're not meaning to do something that's malicious, right? They're out to do something positive and like that, right? So we want to make sure we're working with people. There are about 10% of the cases, there are hardened criminals out there. You know what I mean? There are people that, are doing something we would say, hey, look, that's not really the thing. But most of the people that we're dealing with are not that way. They're pretty great.
And we've got some resources now. We haven't always had this, but we have some resources now. Jessica Kennedy is one of those, and she's given me permission to put a name out there. But when we think about licensing and some of those pieces, you can now contact us. You can coaching@gallup.com. If you can't remember those, if you can't remember anything else, send us a note. If you think you're in that territory, we'd love for you just to contact us in advance. Just give us a heads up. Let somebody review it. We can give you some great pointers on what you can and you can't do based on the agreement that you signed. So some of those things. So we have those resources available now. Hasn't always been there, but it's available now. You can send us a note at coaching. Anything else you want to say on that, Dean? Before we
a couple things. I want to make sure that because this has come up a little bit. I recently talked to a coach, great coach, who went through a program that another coach was offered that was a certification program. And then she realized she wanted to do some stuff with us, but you had to be a Gallup certified strengths coach in order to do those things. Right. So it's always a dicey thing for us. There are certain things that we're going to, like, as we build out the second level stuff and other opportunities, there are certain things we're going to say, gosh, you got to be a Gallup certified coach to do that. And if you've gone through somebody else's program, it doesn't count. Right. And so with people, that's why we want to make sure that as much as possible, people are going through our program, getting certified, because there are certain things that we're going to build based on it. It's kind of like the thing we said earlier, right? The other thing is talk to us. We try to make sure that we want people to succeed. And we try as best as we can to make sure that we, as you know, we're working collaboratively with people around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we've hired a couple of folks who are just experts in this area. So
Yeah.
give us, if you have any questions, just contact us. Florence had a question about using elements of the kits, and so if they're reselling our kits in a sense, saying, "Hey, if you're going to come to our course, you're going to do this," and then can they use, or how should they use, or any guidance on the materials in the kits in their training? Certainly they can reference them. I don't know, Dean, any guidance on that?
Yeah, here's the intent behind the material in the kit. The intent behind the material in the kit was for people, for it to empower people in their coaching work. And by coaching work, we mean the one-on-one work you're doing with people over time to help them discover their strengths, claim their strengths, develop their talents into strengths, that kind of work. We intended it to be material that people were using in their coaching practice, right? We didn't intend it to be something where people would repackage the material and resell it to other coaches, right? And so as we think about it, it wasn't intended to be, it was intended to empower coaches in the work that they were doing. So that was really the intent of it around it. So I hope that helps in terms of providing some kind of guidance around it.
And that would be true of any of our courses and any of our kits.
Right.
As we've transitioned from paper kits to digital kits, there have been some opportunities of documents that we've created that they can reproduce, right?
Yeah.
Out of the digital kits. That's one of the areas where we've changed.
No, it's actually not a change. We always had certain documents that we let people download, and if you look in the document, it says for individual use. It was really designed. It wasn't designed for people to take that document and repackage it as part of another product, or even for sometimes people are coaches inside of an organization. And they're like, oh, this is great. I'm going to put this on my company's server and everybody will have access to it. No, it's not designed for that. It's really designed for people to use individually in the work that they do as a coach, right? That was really the intent.
Yeah, and so taking a form, including in your own materials and selling it, that's what we're talking about, not there. To go back, you had mentioned about domain expertise. Kind of when we think about how important is it for our coaches to be, we did a whole session on kind of niching down and being an expert, and and then building your way back out in the coaching arena. But Dean, do you have to be an expert in these areas, these domain areas you're going into? What should coaches know about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. I think it's a great topic. I think that as many of our strengths coaches start to do work and they start to build their practice, right, as independent coaches, or as they work inside of an organization, it's just, I think it's just like being a learning person or an HR person or an OD person inside of an organization. On the one hand, you've got functional expertise. And on the other hand, the best HR and OD and learning people know something about the industry and that business. So they can connect the two. They can connect their functional expertise to what they know about that industry. I think in the same way, a lot of independent coaches need to think about, what is my domain expertise, or what is my industry expertise? What is it that I know about that's unique, right? So I think there's with a lot of organizations opportunities to just coach strengths, and just coach strengths like vis-a-vis like who you are and building somebody's self-awareness in their role as a manager or a leader in an organization. I think in many cases, coaches will find themselves saying, gosh, the more I see that I start to work with a lot of people in healthcare or financial services or manufacturing or whatever the industry is, or I work with people that work in a particular industry around, I find myself doing that. And the more you've got expertise in there and can connect, I think it's powerful for people to be able to connect coaching and the work they do around strengths with then expertise in a particular industry. And I think that's, over time, I think that gets more and more valuable for people. I also think as many people become strengths coaches, right, differentiating yourself and differentiating your expertise in there really makes a big difference. And being able to say, this is what I do in a very specific way. And this is the impact that I have. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. And so in that context, as we think about coaching and strengths coaching,
what's
the difference, or how do we see the difference between those two? And is there?
Yeah, I think, so there's lots of people that are coaches, and lots of people use different kind of assessments or tools that they use relative to their coaching. There's a lot of people that use, as they think about coaching, they use a lot of different kinds of models and different constructs that they use from. They come from different places, right? I do think that as a strengths coach, I think that I think the first level of being a strengths coach is really helping people to understand their talent, being able to really develop their self-awareness on what does their talent profile look like, who are they not, being able to claim that and really appreciate that, being able to start to point that at the things they care about, starting to invest in developing their talents and the strengths. I think that's the whole first world of it. And I think really being a strengths coach that's a powerful piece. I think the next level is being somebody who starts to help people point their talents and strengths at performance. And I think it's really looking at, how do I point what I'm doing at performance? How do I point what I'm doing at producing a result for people? I think that's where understanding what people are trying to create and what people are trying to produce makes a huge difference. So having that kind of expertise around that. I think also as a strengths coach, again, in a lot of the early days, you're really asking people questions that are designed to bolster, to create that kind of foundation of self-awareness. As you move on with that, I think a lot of it becomes really, how do I point my talents and strengths at outcomes and at results that are meaningful to me? It's interesting, when I talk to Jackie Merritt, Jackie and I talk a lot. I have a huge respect for her as a coach. A lot of times she starts out talk in sessions asking people, what are your goals, right? What do you want to accomplish? Where are you going? And anchors the whole thing on that sense of mission or purpose or outcomes. And I think that's so important that people start to do that. I also think, as we think about coaching strengths, I think that for a lot of coaches, they think about coaching strengths. Oh, hang on a second. This just in. There we go. So, sorry about that. So, as they think about coaching strengths, they think about just having kind of a depth of understanding and knowledge about strengths. I think there's also so there's the knowledge component of the content component of knowing what your strengths are, or knowing the domain of strengths. I think the other element here, though, that's super important is your ability to really be a strengths coach. So one of the things about strengths coaches is they really are focused on and work on what's right with people. So they're at work on really, they're being a strengths coach, and they're at work on what's right with people, and they're working on people's talents around that. It's funny. So I work out with a trainer. I work out as a trainer here in Bentonville, right? And this guy's amazing. He is really super talented. And one of the things I love about this guy, it's funny, I was coming home from a training session yesterday, and one of the things I love about the guy is he's like a strengths coach. He is a guy, I don't have, anybody who's ever been around me for more than 10 minutes, it's not the like working out and being in the physical domain is my level of expertise, right? I don't have a lot of mastery in that arena. I'm not a super athletic guy, never have been, right? And so when I go work out with him, that's an area where, I'm just getting started. Right. And what's so cool about him is he's always operating in such a way that he's always interacting with what's right about me. He's always interacting there's never this thing like he's working on my weaknesses or the things I should be doing and I'm not doing, or what I can't do, right? Or where I should be that I'm not. He's always meets me exactly where I am, and he's interacting with what's right about me. And one of the things I think sometimes we focus on, particularly as coaches, I think we tend to focus on, do I know enough about the strengths? Do I know enough about all those talent themes that I'm really articulating those? And do I know all the dimensions? And by the way, I think that's a good endeavor. But I also think there's the other piece of it where, as part of being a strengths coach, is being someone that is working with what's right about people. I have seen over the years coaches and managers who use strengths sort of like a baton to hit people with. You know what I mean? Like, you really need to control your activator. You know what I mean? Or your deliberative is causing a problem for people, right? And that's not really strengths coaching per se, right? It's like using strengths as a weapon is not really where we want to be, right? Really what we want to be, and people need to be responsible for and accountable for the impact that they're having in the way that you use their talent. But we really want to, coaching is a being job. And really, as strengths coaches, we want to be interacting with people around what works about them and how they can continue to express what works about them.
Do we promote more of the performance in our leadership and management and team lead and those courses that we do around engagement? Do we get to those elements of strengths and performance in those courses?
Yeah.
Adine?
Yeah, we do. I mean, yes, we do. And I think that there's lots of connections. I think, yes, we do. And I think we're continuing to kind of unpack that, right? One of the newest areas of our thinking and science is the work that we're doing around performance development, which is where we're really re-engineering and reinventing performance management in the current workplace, and really thinking about performance through a totally different lens. So when we talk about it, when we think about it, we're thinking about how do we really help organizations and help the managers and leaders that work in organizations really be able to foster performance with folks. And strengths is a really big piece of it. One of the things that we know, for instance, is that strengths is a catalyst for employee engagement. So that when you're doing employee engagement in an organization and you layer on strengths, it becomes a catalyst for that work. And so we know that strengths has that great impact. In addition to producing results on its own, it has that great impact on our work in engagement, our work around performance development. It serves as kind of a catalyst or an accelerant for that work.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. One,
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I've never done this to you. We'll see how good you are.
Oh, good.
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to disappear for a minute. There's a situation I need to handle behind me, and then I'll come back here in just a second. But
okay, great.
During the summit, Tom Rath talked a lot about well-being, and Tom Matson in his conversation about CliftonStrengths for students, again, kind of started with well-being. There's been some questions about, are we going to bring more of our well-being work into what we're doing from a strengths perspective, and how committed are we? We've got the book that's out there, but can you talk a little bit about how we're committed to well-being and some of those pieces, and then I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let me talk about that, and then I'll probably do another question here. We are committed to well-being. So, and we've done some great work and some great thinking, as you know, and Tom's thinking really was the genesis for a lot of that around that work that we've done around well-being. So that has all gone really, really well. And we continue to be able to support that. I will tell you, we continue to look at what's the best way to be able to plug that well-being work into the work we do around strengths, the work we do with coaches. We still, I will tell you, haven't necessarily cracked the code on exactly what's the way to be able to kind of plug that work in. It is powerful work, and we know that there is this great connection between strengths and well-being. And I would say, so I can't say, okay, yeah, this is exactly what our strategy is, or this is how we're going to do it. It is something that we talk about. It is something that we're thinking about. And it is also our well-being work is a powerful body of work with what I think are some really very, very fascinating assertions around that work, that are supported by our research and our science there. So it's all good work. And I don't have a great answer to be able to say, hey, what's our plan for how strengths and well-being is going to connect. I do recommend one is we have the Wellbeing book that is a dynamite book to read. There's also Tom Rath has a couple books that are great, I think, for coaches to read relative to that. Eat, Move, Sleep, and Are You Fully Charged are a couple of Tom's books. If you saw Tom at the summit, his presentation was, I would just say, for me personally, it was just a highlight of the summit. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. He was incredibly authentic, incredibly moving, and incredibly knowledgeable. And it was just, I thought his presentation of the summit was just absolutely top notch. So I don't have a great answer relative to that. And at the same time, I will tell you, it's something we certainly are committed to well-being. We're certainly committed to strengths, and I can't tell you exactly what that connection point will be. Right. And so, but it's something certainly that as we continue to think about it and discuss it, that it will start to evolve for us,
Donna had asked a question earlier in the chat room about you had given a talk, and she's trying to track down where that was about.
Yeah.
If you only had 1 hour with someone.
Yeah.
What would you do? Do you remember where we did that? Was that on a Call to Coach, or was that during the learning series? Do you remember?
If you only had 1 hour with somebody, give me more about what the question.
Here's
the question.
Yeah.
You did an online session on best to do a 1 hour coaching session. You only likely to get the coach once. Oh, great. I think that was I think it was on Call to Coach about like and I think where we were talking about, no, maybe it was in the learning series. It was in the learning series. It was really about CliftonStrengths feedback. And what do you do? What do you include in the CliftonStrengths feedback session, right? And so, And so I think it's in that material. I believe it was because I think it was the last CliftonStrengths feedback or the last learning series. This is like a shameless plug, but one of the things we do for certified coaches, we literally kicked off yesterday our planning for the next year's series. Every year in January, February, in that time frame, we do a week-long series of webinars that are just for certified coaches. It's one of the benefits we provide to certified coaches. It's free, and we make it available to all the certified coaches, and we try to line up speakers for that. That are really super talented speakers that talk about a bunch of different things. And then there's also me. So like that.
Self-deprecation. Nicely done. Let me remind individuals how to find those things. So we have a YouTube series that we do on Call to Coach that's just Dean. And so some of the best stuff we've done in the last year is on that YouTube channel. You can go out to if you just search for Gallup Strength Center on YouTube and you go to the channel, you'll see one that has Dean. It's just a playlist that is everything we've done here. If you're not watching those, you're missing out on a lot of great material. So go out and do that. If you're a certified coach, those are available in our Yammer group. And so we post those in there. If you just search for 2017 learning series, you should be able to find those videos. I've posted them all in there and they're available in there as well. Anything else you want to add to that, Dean?
No, okay. I do think there are a real benefit of being a certified coach, that those videos are some of the coolest ones we've done, I think. And we've used a lot of Gallup experts in them.
Luke asks a follow-up question to the well-being. He says, Dean, would it be fair to say that engagement in work is step one, but well-being and engagement don't necessarily exist together?
No. Yeah, Luke, I would tell you, no. I would tell you typically when we're working with organizations or in this area, typically in a lot of cases, we like to put engagement in first, and we start with measurement to just be able to establish kind of a baseline for the work that we do around it. But there is a clear tie, and I'm not an expert on well-being, but there's a clear tie between well-being and engagement. And engagement and well-being. So there is strong connective tissue there. And if you're interested, our well-being book is actually a great resource for that. But typically we tend to start and measure engagement first, and then kind of layer on strengths and layer on well-being around that, because we know both of those things create to advance that. One of the reasons we tend to start with engagement is it provides measurement so people can see progress. Right. It also gives you, when you measure engagement in organizations, it gives you a sense of where are the hot spots, where are the places, the teams and the work groups that are doing really well, where are the ones that are having difficulty, and it helps to be able to pinpoint a little bit more of that. So, and obviously you all know we use the Q12 for that.
Yeah, and a great easy way to measure. Very standard and and very simple to deploy, and very simple for individuals to take with just 12 questions. So some good. If you have questions on Q12, ask us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Somebody will get back to you and can help you explain some of those pieces. Donna, and then Luke in the Facebook group earlier had put this question, and I want you to go a little bit lower level on this. He'd asked about favorite question. He'd also, do you have a question that you like to use or a favorite activity? And then Donna in the chat also, and I think this goes towards the, we say name it, claim it, aim it. And that aim piece seems to be a challenge for some. So Dean, as you think about that, the question, the activities, and the aiming portion, can you give some favorites for what you like to do?
Yeah, and I'd also love to tackle Beverly's question in the Facebook group about domains too. Let's
Perfect.
do
Let's do
that
it.
too, because
Let's do
I'd
it.
love to do that one too. So, if you had only one coaching question to use, what would it be? That's a really great question. I don't know that I've got like it sounds horrible. I don't really have one that I would say is like my favorite coaching question to use. The one thing that I like to help people when I'm coaching people using their talents and strengths, right? That I like to find out is I like to make sure that um, that I'm asking people the kind of questions that are, how did you use your talents to help you be successful in a particular situation? So it's a combination of helping people win. And Don, and this I can't claim any originality on this. This came from Don. One of the things Don said was, gosh, if you want to help people really understand their talents and strengths, is help them unpack or help them study their successes, right? Really look at their successes, because it'll give you clues to really understand to really be able to understand their talents and strengths, right? And what their strengths are. And so I think that I really like to help people understand, as they're thinking about what's working and where they're being successful, is to help them think about how are your strengths helping you succeed there? And because the more people can be intentional and conscious around that, the more they start to be able to optimize their strengths. The other thing that happens is people stop trying to claim talents that they don't have or strengths that they don't have. So we've said this before, but as people develop in a strengths-based way, that they get narrower, not broader, for the most part. So we typically think of development as I get broader and broader and broader. In fact, people get narrower and more focused in the ways that they can deploy their strengths, right? So the more people have mastery, you see them really zeroing in versus getting broader. And one of the things, helping people connect their strengths to their successes, helps people to zero in on what is really working there. So Luke, the kind of questions that I typically ask are those kind of questions. And then kind of feed forward questions like, next time, what would you do? Or next time, how can you use your talents to address something like this? Or next time, like those kind of feed forward questions, using that kind of feed forward technique to be able to do that. I really like that. With regard to, I think, your question about what's a favorite team activity to do with a group that's new to the Clifton Strengths Finder or new to Clifton Strengths, I will tell you my favorite thing to do early on is, even before we start dealing with Clifton Strengths, is I like to use Don Clifton's 5 clues to talent with people. I like to go through what those 5 clues to talent are: rapid learning and flow and glimpses of excellence and yearnings. And I'm now blanking on the 5th one, but I always do this. But I love to be able to use those 5 clues to talent with people, even before we get into the language of strengths. And the reason I love to do that is I love people. Sometimes we get in, as soon as we get into the language of strengths, it gives us a common vocabulary, but it can easily get into labels, right? I'm a this, you're a that, like that, as opposed to helping people to really think about themselves and their lives. What do they like to do? What are they naturally good at? And communicate that in their own words. And so oftentimes when I'm leading strength sessions, I'll work with people inside the 5 clues to talent first. And just I'll ask people, gosh, where have you seen this in your life? Where have you seen rapid learning? Where have you seen glimpses of excellence? Where are those moments of flow for you? What are those things you yearn to do on a regular basis, right? Where has there been rapid learning, where you picked up something so fast? Like where is that in your life? Describe those things, because I think it helps people just in a natural way, in a real organic way, to be able to talk about what they're good at and where they see their successes and where they see their strengths. And then when you move into the language of Clifton Strengths, then it gives people a vocabulary to talk about those things. But first, identifying those things first, I think, is really powerful. So that's one of my favorite team activities around that, I think, is important. So
what about domains?
Yeah, so Beverly asked a question about, what would you say to coaches who feel they're lacking something to coachees, sorry, who feel they're lacking something because their top 5 are all in one domain?
Before you start, Dean, can I prime this a little bit? Because I see this in the Facebook group all the time.
Great.
Where I get the feeling as we're getting to domains too quickly in conversations. And there's too much worrying or too much leaking about this well-rounded domain at the individual level, where domains were really kind of came out of our leadership work and our team work. So can you address some of those? Because I just feel like we're doing a disservice to people when we get them, oh, you're like, I'm for influencing and I don't have any executing. Should I be worried about that? I think that's an example where in our coaching, we're getting people a little worked up over something maybe we shouldn't.
That's right. That's right. I think so. Yeah. So let me just talk about the domains kind of broadly. I think to your point about getting into the domains too early, domains are not a beginner level concept. Really, if you read the material in strengths-based leadership, the domains were based on a study. I think of like 50. I may be misquoting this. Okay, so I'm bad with numbers, but I think it was like a study of like 50,000 people. It was designed specifically for leaders and how leaders and managers use their strengths in group settings, right? So that was the intent behind the study. And the idea was not to definitively parse out strengths where we say, this is that and this is the other one, but to be able to look at how I use my strength. I might use some of my talents to build relationships or to influence or to think like that, right? And I think there's sometimes if you get to them too fast with people, there just starts to be some mischief around it. So it's like, and we all love to joke about it, but it's kind of like, oh, I have no thinking themes. Does that mean I don't think? Right? Or like I have no influencing themes. Does that mean that I can't influence people? No, it doesn't work that way. I love to tell a story that I worked with the executive team for an architectural firm. It was the group of partners for an architectural firm. It was a small architectural firm. And one of the things that we were looking at their team grid, and I was with several of the executives, some of the leaders for that organization, for that firm. And they were concerned because they looked at their team grid for all this leadership group, and they had very few influencing themes. And it was really interesting. They had one person on the team that had a lot of influencing themes, and that person felt very, very different than the rest of the team, and they were worried. Should they, in order to grow and go to the next level as a firm, did they need to have more people with influencing themes, right? But it was interesting. The more we got into it, the more we realized, and talked about it is, one of the questions I asked them was, well, tell me now, how do you influence your customers? How do you acquire customers? How do you influence the customers that you've got, the clients that you work with right now? And they said, well, gosh, almost everybody on the leadership team has responsibility as a theme. That was an accident. We don't hire for it, but that was an accident. And that what you see is a lot of people in leadership roles in our organization that have execution themes. And we pride ourselves on our responsiveness. We pride ourselves on how quickly we're able to respond and how we're sensitive to customer needs and like that. And, the thing I said to him was, gosh, that's how you influence your customers and that's how you'll grow. And it's not that you don't have influencing themes and that's going to be a problem. It's you're going to use those execution themes as your way of shaping your relationship with your customers and influencing your customers. That's how it works. So I think it's a good proxy for how we all want to think about the themes. Right. When I'm coaching somebody, I'm always fascinated as you get into like theme dynamics is what, and you look through the lens of, like, take learning, for instance, right? It's not just, hey, I love to learn, but it's also, what do I love to learn about? Where do I point my love of learning? Right? Is it my learning about people? Is my learning about history? Is my learning about a particular subject matter? Like, what do I point it at? Right? And that in many cases is shaped by the other themes that we have. So similarly with domains, if you don't, Beverly, I love this question, because if you don't have themes in a particular area, it doesn't mean that you're deficit in that area. It just means that your disposition is more toward the areas, the domain areas where you have a large cluster of themes. The other thing that's really important is I just don't like teaching domains with just top 5, because it's such an incomplete picture. You really need to, there's that exercise where we have you go down and look through your strengths profile, and where we say all the time, some of the time, rarely, you got to be able to look down and look at all the themes where we would say all of the time. And for some people, that's 10 themes. For some people, that's 8. For some people, that's 12. For some people, that's 16, right? Where they could say all the time. And it kind of depends on the intensity of talent. But as I look through those, I've got to really look at that picture and look at that whole collection of themes where I would say all of the time, map those by domains and see where you are. I will tell you, there's one personal kind of insight that I had around the domains that I thought was useful for me. It was funny. The first time I took my top 15 and mapped them on the domains, and I am like hugely, like if you look at my top 15, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say like 8 of them or 9 of them are influencing themes. It's like absurd, right? I'm all influence. And it was a really big epiphany for me because prior to that time, I always thought of myself as a quote unquote people person, right? A big relationship guy because I love people. I got woo, I got relator in my top 5. You know what I mean? I'm like a big relationship guy. Well, the truth is that it was really, for me, it was really powerful for me to see like, no, I'm a big influence guy. Right. And I got a little relationship, but I'm mostly an influence guy. And it really helped me to be able to understand and think about my own talents in a very different way. I could see where actually in a group, my instinct is to go influence. My instinct is not to go relate, right? My instinct is to go in and shape it, right? As opposed to go in and relate. And one of the things I have in my top 14, if you look at my top 15 themes, I have 2 relationship themes. I have relator number 5, right? And I've got positivity number 15. Right? Those are my only 2 relationship themes in my whole top 15, right? And it really helped me and to be able to think about that I know, for instance, if I'm going to go into a group and I need to establish great relationships, I try to meet every one of the people in the group one-on-one first and build relationships one-on-one because I know I'm more comfortable relating that way. Right? It's a different thing for me. And so I give you that example because it's a great example, I think, of working with the domains and helping people to really see that. The thing that I get concerned about when people teach the domains, I'll say this and then I'll move on. Okay. I get concerned that people make up a lot of crazy stuff about themselves, about each other, when we haven't presented the domains in the right way. So there's a lot of mischief that can come out of it when people when people are drawing false conclusions as opposed to really understanding where it's valuable and where it's useful.
Yeah, I agree. It's a huge danger. And I want people to be careful. I will probably cut this section out and make it available because we get so many questions on the domains in the Facebook group. And I think it's important. Dean, Florence had asked a really good question on Facebook about all 34 from the start. So can you talk a little bit about, if I'm having a customer and they are all 34, how do I get started? What are some stuff? And again, I'm gonna mute. I'll be right back.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. Florence, I'm going to say something before I answer that question. I'm going to say something. I loved your comment about the domains, just a cap on this domains thing, where you said, I love my instinct is. I think it's great with the domains to just know what it gives you, I think, a lot of times is your biases. I tend to lead with my thinking themes, or I tend to lead with my execution themes. I think it gives you your biases, and I think that's part of the value. So I'm glad you like that phrase, because I think that's part of the value of domains is being able to really go in and see, gosh, what are my biases, or what are the ways that I tend to want to work, right? So I love that piece. So back to the question on leveraging full 34 from the start. Here's the thing I think that you need to do if people have full 34 from the start. And typically, by the way, when we work with organizations, we typically walk into the organization and say, gosh, for everybody who's manager and above should have all 34. Right. So typically we say, yeah, you want to have that. One of the places, so typically when you're working with all 34, one of the things you have to help people with is you have to help people to make sense of that. All of a sudden they got this list of 34 and they don't necessarily know what to do with it. So one is, I think it's really important to do that exercise where people go through and do that all the time, some of the time, rarely. Exercise. So people can see, okay, these are the ones I tend to lead with. These are the ones that fire once in a while and mostly in response to something else. And these are the ones that rarely happen, right? It's like, I know, like, competition is really low for me. Competition is it must be below 17 because it's not in my top 16. And so I know that every once in a while, like, like if we're playing cards, I get a little competitive, right? But it's not my instinct to be competitive. It's just, it only shows up in response to a particular environment and when it's needed. It's not necessarily what I lead with. It doesn't fire naturally in that way. So I would tell you, it's important for people to have that kind of context of how do I make sense of this. The other thing I think is important is to focus people on their top 5 and give people some context for their bottom 5. So, Don, if I was a better man, I would know this quote by heart. But there's a quote that we use in the Advanced Strengths Coaching course from Don, where he says basically, you could spend a lifetime really mastering your top 5. And when I first heard that, I sort of poo-pooed it. I sort of discounted that. I'm like, well, no, I can dig in and I'm going to do more. And I really found, like, after I was introduced to strengths, I would say I probably spent 3 years or three and a half years really just thinking about my top 5. And I would say I'm still discovering things about my top 5 12 years later. So I think it really is true. I think what Don says is right on, that as you focus in your top talent themes, your top strengths, developing them, understanding them in context, understanding how they develop over time, you could spend a lifetime really working on that. And I think sometimes people get bored too quickly with them. So I think it's helping people to really be able to do that. So I think in a first session with all 34, one of the things you got to do is really focus people to say, hey, look, you really want to focus on your top 5 and start unpacking those, because those are the ones there's a reason we call them your signature themes, that you're going to use them all the time. They are like your signature. They're going to be an imprint on everything that you do. And so you really want to spend some time with those. The other thing I think you got to do, and it's funny, I don't know why people are this way, but they always want to know what to do with their bottom 5, right? It's like, my number 34 is harmony. You know what I mean? And there's nothing to do with it, right? I mean, it sounds funny to say, but I think you got to really help people to know it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness, and if it becomes a problem, we'll come up with strategies for how you account for it. But there's nothing you should do with your bottom 5. You shouldn't try to develop them. You shouldn't try to compensate for them. You just let them be, just let them be. And so there's really nothing that you need to do with us. It's okay. And there's not a perfect top 5 or a perfect bottom 5, or it doesn't mean anything about who you are and what you're going to be capable of and all these other things relative to that. So I think that that it's really important to help people with that piece, right? So, and I think it's good for people to know, as you work with people in the full 34 and you start to focus people, then to really get down to the work of kind of rolling up their sleeves and getting into their top 5 or so to really start to unpack them. So hopefully that helps in terms of what to do relative to a full 34.
Dean, with our students, we give them all 34 because they're Gallup employees when they come in.
Yeah.
But one of the exercises I like to have them do is the highlight, cross out, circle on the 5 and really work through them. And it slows them down a little bit because you got to do work in each one of those sections. And so it kind of slows them down from like, oh geez, do I want to do this for all, for the next 5, so it kind of forces them into the material a little bit and kind of keeps them. It doesn't mean they don't go to the end. Yeah. I like to say here at Gallup, we joke a lot about our bottom 5. We spend a lot of time, ribbing each other and joking about it. And I think that's a good, I loved your advice is don't necessarily do things about them. Let them be. Yeah. Let them just rest where they are.
And sometimes you'll see, like, I will tell you, my number 34 is harmony. I will tell you, just not intentionally, but coincidentally, some of my best partners at work have harmony in their top 5. I didn't set out for it to be that way, but I've got a lot of great partners because I'm not a big consensus guy. I know that sounds horrible to say, but I'm not a real big consensus guy. I'm going to call the play and that's going to be it. Kind of guy. And there's a lot of times when consensus makes things go faster. And I love having people around me that have that talent around that. One of the things I will say, and we talk a lot about this in the Advanced Strengths Coaching course, is you know, a lot of people times people think their complementary partnerships are my weakness and your strength together, right? But in fact, that's not a complementary partnership. Complementary partnerships are my strength and your strength together, right? And so it's not just, hey, I'm compensating for my weakness by using a partner. It's really that I'm contributing something to that partnership and you're contributing something to that partnership, and together it's got that kind of gestalt effect, you know, where the sum is bigger than the whole, or the total's bigger than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It took us 59 minutes to get gestalt in here.
Yeah. Really
Appreciated that one. So any final thoughts, Dean, before we wrap it?
Just, you know, these are all great questions. You're right. You know, like we didn't get through all the questions. There's still a ton of questions I'd love to get through. I love these questions. I don't know, you know, we've never kind of done this format. Usually our format is I just get on and talk, right? I actually kind of like this and I love the questions. So maybe we should do this again sometime. This is really great. And hopefully
maybe every couple, you know, every couple we'll do an AMA with you.
Yeah. And, you know, here's the thing is as always, like I love hearing from people. So please do, you know, like connect with me on LinkedIn, send me emails. I'm happy. I love connecting with people. So if you're so inclined, I'd love to be connected with you.
Awesome. Well, we will remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or your comments, like Dean was mentioning. If you have those questions, anything we talked about today, just send us an email. coaching@gallup.com is the easiest way, maybe easiest way to remember to get that. We'll get that routed to the right person. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones. We have a topic section on the coaches blog. If you want to see all of our materials by topic, that's available. You can search on the website as well. Of course, on the YouTube page, you can just search for it. All that stuff's available for you. We'd like to make it available. If you're wondering, where is this coaches blog? Well, it's at coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, Dean mentioned that earlier in the program, you can see a list of all those courses. They're on our courses page. Guess what the address for that is? courses.gallup.com. We make that pretty easy for you. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. Dean, thanks for coming on today. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.